Morning, welcome back to Football League World TV for a new week. It's time for the weekend review show here on Football League World TV. I'm your host, George Dagless. Joining me, Ned Holmes and Billy Mulley. Ned, how you getting on?
Yeah, all good. Thanks, mate. All good here.
Good stuff. Billy, how are you?
Yeah, doing all well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. It was a good weekend. People at home, people wherever you're watching, do get in touch. Let us know where you were over the weekend, what games you were watching, what you thought of the action. Of course, it was mainly Championship football to talk about in the EFL, League One, League Two clubs in FA Cup action. So we won't be talking about that. Just the Championship for us this morning. Let's get straight into it. And we'll start with West Brom and Middlesbrough. A 1-1 draw at the Hawthorns. Middlesbrough did go in front through Josh Coburn, but the Baggies pulled them back. Grady Diangana getting the equaliser. Of course, the result of that, for Middlesbrough at least, was the loss of their manager, Neil Warnock, being sacked and being replaced by Chris Wilder. Ned, let's talk Warnock first of all. Were you surprised by this decision?
Well, I guess it was slightly surprising given... the result or draw away at West Brom is all things considered, I'd say a pretty good result. It seems like that they had, Wilder lined up, which I guess really justifies the decision. They didn't want to miss out on him, that they were probably looking at, the likes of United, the Conte situation, perhaps, and seeing sort of move for them, a couple of sackings as well this weekend, the likes of Norwich, Villa. So who knows how well that might prove. I think it's a little harsh and a little disrespectful, perhaps, to one of the greatest EFL managers that we've really seen. They're only 4 points off the playoffs, of course, but that's modern football, really, isn't it? And getting Chris Wilder in kind of justifies that, while it does seem a little harsh and disrespectful to Warnock.
Billy, what do you make of the decision? It did seem as though almost whatever the result was going to be for Middlesbrough at the weekend, given that as well that it was away at West Brom, makes it maybe even a little bit more surprising. What do you make of the decision there?
Yeah, well, not too many teams will go to West Brom and take points. So in that respect, I think it was a good result. In terms of the way they restricted West Brom as well, it seemed quite good. So, I think in that respect, I think it was something that was coming. It's probably something that's been coming for a while as well. And I think even if they would have won quite convincingly, it seemed that was a decision that was there and ready. As Ned says, I think that Wilder was lined up a little bit before and didn't want to miss out on a very good Championship manager and someone that I think will progress Middlesbrough quite well. But I don't think that's the end of Warnock. I think we'll see him somewhere else very soon. It always seems to be the case.
Well, that's the question, isn't it, Ned? Neil Warnock is a man famed for saying, "This is my last job," and then he finds another job that will then be his last job. What does he do now? He's obviously, he's just passed that 1600 league match record in terms of, managing them. What does he do now? Obviously, he's going to have a little bit of a break, but can you see him popping up elsewhere in the future?
Absolutely, yeah. I think he's sort of, I think he said he told his wife he's going to retire about 15 times, but I think it's one of those situations that will probably, he'll go under the radar for a few months, and then a couple of clubs that need stopgap managers later on in the season, he's the guy to turn to, really. And I think it's probably just all about the size of the club, really, and whether it's enticing enough to pull him back in.
Billy, do you think, we've seen the last of Neil Warnock in the dugout in this country, or is he going to be tempted back in at some point?
I think no chance. I think there's always, as Ned says, there's always one more job for him, and whether it's a club in the Championship or a team competing at the top end of League One, sort of the likes of Ipswich, Sheffield Wednesday, Portsmouth, somewhere big, I could see him going in League One. But yeah, I think a Championship move as well is equally as likely.
Yeah, I think overall, given where Middlesbrough were when he come in, at least he steadied ship, and obviously they'll be looking to springboard on with Chris Wilder at the helm. Hopefully it's not the last we see of Neil Warnock, though. He's always a great character to watch, and hopefully it's not the last we see of that bum bag with the photos that he gives out as well. He'll be coming to a different club near you. As for Chris Wilder, Ned, what do you think the first sort of point of call needs to be for him? He's already, got into the training ground, met his new players. What's sort of the top of his agenda going forward?
I think it's an interesting one. I think we could perhaps see a little bit of a teething sort of period. That's the specific overlapping centre-back sort of style that Chris Wilder brings. And I think the positive position he finds himself in is that, they're not too far away from the playoffs right now. So it's not something that he has to go in and he's got this short time period to turn things around, and it has to be an instant impact. I think, he'll want to just slowly get, grow and move the club ahead of that January window, where you'd imagine, he's going to get a fair bit of money to spend to sort of mould that club more into, his squad.
Billy, you look at the table, Middlesbrough, I mean, they're sitting full team, which doesn't sound great, but they're only 4 points off the players, which shows, as always, how tight the Championship is. Do you think now they've got Wilder in charge, they can be considered greater playoff challengers than they perhaps were?
Definitely. I've been quite impressed with Middlesbrough even when they came to Luton the other day, lost 3-1, but it was just a 5-minute period of madness that completely swayed that tie. But I was impressed with the way they set up, the way they progressed. They won the midfield battle from early on, and I think they've got a really capable squad. As Wilder said, he said that he thinks he already knows what he needs to do in January, but I don't think it's too much. Got the likes of Spence and Lewis Wing to come back at the end of the season as well. A capable enough squad, and I think definitely there's a lot to be desired and a lot to be happy for, because it's a good project to have on his hands, and a good capable manager, and a manager that can attract good level players as well. So I think it's all pointing towards all sort of going up, and I think that maybe this season is all about putting a plan in place, something to build on for next season. Playoffs might be a little bit too ambitious this season. I know they're within 4 points of it, but given that any given team could go on and have a good run and sort of take that away from the other teams, I think that this season is just about building something that they can build upon next season. And when they have the likes of Spence back and Lewis Wing, I think that they can progress even further.
Okay, we will see how they get on. It's good to see Chris Wilder back in the dugout, and hopefully it won't be the last we see of Neil Warnock in this country as well. Let's move away then from West Brom and Middlesbrough's draw. Let's talk Holmes win at Barnsley next. And Ned, it was a really important win for Hull, wasn't it? And just a really good result against obviously a Barnsley team that are very close to them in the table.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, a huge momentum boost to sort of. I know it's only moving one place up in the table, but that step up's absolutely massive for them. And if they lose that, things are starting to look a bit bleak. And if you're losing, to no disrespect to Joe Lauman, if you're losing to a managerless Barnsley team, that one of your direct competitors it's not going to do much for the squad's confidence, but as it was, they bounced back, and I think one thing that struck me, this was the George Honeyman that we saw last season, wasn't it? This, the player that inspired them really to promotion back to the Championship, and like I think that's his first goal and assist this season. If he can kick on, that's going to be massively important for them, because he is such a big player for them.
As for Barnsley, Billy, I mean, they finally got back to winning ways against Derby, which in itself was a really big result, and they would have sort of circled this whole game at home again as one that they could really kick on a little bit before the international break and try and get themselves some breathing space. How concerning do you think it's going to be, the fact that they have lost at home to Hull?
Yeah, I do think it's quite concerning, quite damaging, the fact that they had won that game, and this was the game before going into the international break. Good chance to build momentum and then sort of assess their options there, give them something to build on. But it's like they have to go back from scratch again and then completely go back to basics, because it wasn't a very good display at all. Whole side, to be fair, played very well. As Ned said there, the attacking options they've got now, once Honeyman gets back firing, Malik Wilkes, Keane Lewis Potter as well. They've got some very good attacking midfielders, wingers, and players that will create chances. But this is not the Barnsley side I remember from last year. I mean, they've got a very good squad. They've got some very good young players coming through, but it doesn't mean anything at the moment, because they're not getting the results. They're not putting in the performances to justify that. And I still think it is an appealing project for a manager to come into, given what they have at their disposal. But is someone there to stop the rot, or is someone coming to try and progress the club and sort of start their own project? It's interesting to see how they go about it. But yeah, not very good from a Barnsley perspective at all.
Certainly a tough weekend for Barnsley. They'll be hoping to get their managerial situation sorted over this next international break. That result leaves Hull in 22nd now. They've leapfrogged the Tykes, who are sitting 23rd. Up next, we're going to talk Forest's 3-0 win over Preston. Ned, do you think almost a little bit of a surprise that Preston kind of, suffered such a defeat, given how high they would have been after their win at Bournemouth earlier this week, or last week even?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really disappointing one from Preston and Frankie McAvoy's perspective. That win against Bournemouth, the manner of it, as well as the win, sort of being the setback, fighting back, getting that winner, that could have really helped their season kick on. But now it's sort of a similar situation that Billy was saying with Barnsley, in terms of it's sort of back to square one with them again. I mean, you'd say they've got too much quality to be really looking over their shoulder too much, but equally, it's a kind of defeat that in my eyes, outlines that it's set for another real mid-table fifth season for them, really, and a really frustrating one. I think for the Preston fans' perspective, that travel to Forest to have that sort of setback and not be able to build on what was a fantastic result in midweek.
Yeah, certainly inconsistency still sort of rearing their head for North End. Billy, as for Forest, I just want to talk about Jed Spence, actually. He seems to be flying at the moment. Forest fans are loving him. Obviously on loan from Middlesbrough. Middlesbrough fans were a little bit miffed that he was allowed to go to Forest on loan, and I think he's showing why. Now Chris Wilder's obviously gone in there. Do you think there's much chance Forest are going to be able to keep him past this sort of loan spell that he's on at the moment?
It's a difficult one because Wilder's seen a lot of success with his wing back, so he's probably immediately thinking that Spence is a player that he could sort of get him equipped to his style of football. And I think he's definitely a player that could come back to Middlesbrough and thrive, really, because he's still young. He's got bags and bags of pace. He's intelligent. He's a good tackler as well. Physically, he's growing as well. So it's one hell of a player that Middlesbrough have at their disposal. But equally, I think Forest might actually, I think they could go for him because Cooper is sort of reaping the rewards of his style at the moment. He's seen success himself with fullbacks and wing backs at Swansea, and the performances he's putting in justifies a move for him whenever Forest deem necessary, because he's a player that's certainly progressed them as a club, and Forest in general at the moment have been excellent. I think apart from the top two, I think they're the informed team in the division at the moment.
Just before we move on, Ned, would you class Forest as playoff contenders this year? I mean, you look at the table at the moment; they're just a point ahead of Preston now after that win, so they finally sort of leapfrog North End. But wherever you said Preston perhaps looking at a mid-table finish, I think Forest have got sort of higher aspirations this year in the Championship now. Yeah,
absolutely, and I think it's important. I think maybe everyone was a little bit guilty of, once that winning run ended, of thinking, well, maybe that was just the new manager bounce. But if you look, it was games against Fulham, QPR, Sheffield United. Every team in the Championship's going to find them a tough challenge. But they were back to sort of their outstanding best under Cooper. And I think importantly as well, 3 goals in the last 2 for Lewis Grabban. If he can get back to scoring the sort of rate that we know he can, he's obviously a bit of a streaky scorer, but if he can get really back flying, then I would certainly have them amongst the playoff contenders. I mean, there's so much quality in that squad. I thought the back four the defensive line as well were absolutely excellent on Saturday. I would be concerned about the recall of Jed Spence. There's talk that there's a January clause in his deal. But yeah, certainly a team that at the moment I'd consider as one of the real contenders.
Okay, certainly looking a little bit better for the Reds than it was a few weeks ago. They're sitting 13th, as I mentioned, in the Championship table. Preston just a point behind, but down in 17th. Up next, we'll talk Millwall's draw with Derby. Ned, I've got to take a little bit of blame for this one, I think, because on the EFL London show last week, I said Millwall are no longer the draw specialists. They hadn't drawn a league game since the end of September. Now said that they've gone and drawn against Derby County. It was probably a result as well that going into the game, Millwall fans would have been really hoping for a victory, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. But to be honest, at half time that they were very lucky to be level. I thought Derby were absolutely excellent. That they looked like they wanted it so much more. And Millwall's, the absence of Sean Hutchinson really highlighted what an important player he is. I think next to him, that Daniel Ballard and Jake Cooper become, twice the player, and it was really shaky, and there were a lot of chances early on, really, and if Scott Malone doesn't score that long range strike just before halftime, it could be a very different game. But equally, following the red card and a lot of late chances, Millwall will be disappointed they didn't come away with 3 points. It's a funny one because they've been on that great run, and yet 35 minutes in, that you got a lot of fans basically hurling abuse at Rowett because they're not ahead. So I think the Den has been a positive and a negative for them this season. But yeah, I think they'll probably look at it as a missed opportunity. But from the first 50 minutes, you'd argue that Derby could say the same, really.
Just on Derby, Ned, obviously you saw them live there at the New Den. You look at where they are in the table now, they're 9 points off of safety. They've got 6 points. Peterborough currently sitting on 15 in 21st. From what you saw from them, have they got enough, do you think, to try and get themselves out of trouble? Or is it going to be a case, as it was quite a lot last year, but obviously they didn't have the points deduction, where good performances, but they're not really getting the results to sort of back that up?
No, I would say as long as this next point deduction that seems to be pending at the moment isn't, if it's 3 points or less, I think that they've got a great chance. Honestly, I was so impressed by the quality of the performance by Derby. That back four impressed me. I think Shinnie and Birdie in central midfield is a real duo, and the likes of Eversele and Knight, Lawrence. Those are quality attacking players. The issue they face really is, and this is nothing against Sam Baldock. He's an experienced DFL player, but that they just don't have that consistent goal scorer at the moment. They had that, then I think I've got no doubt they created the chances to win the game. I think they've got the quality, and it's going to be huge, really, if they can, as I said, keep the points deduction to 3 at max, and then, have some money to spend in January. Then I think they'd have a great chance, because the job Wayne Rooney's doing there is hugely impressive.
Okay, that result leaves Millwall in 9th, just a point off the playoffs, but they'll be looking to score a few more goals than they have been so far this season. As I mentioned, Derby currently bottom of the table, but Ned at least is backing them to turn that around sooner rather than later, and they'll be hoping that prediction can come true. Up next, Blackburn 3, Sheffield United 1. Billy, a much-needed result for Rovers after what happened to them earlier on last week at Ewood Park when they lost 7-0 at home to Fulham.
Yeah, an excellent response, and especially going down after 2 minutes, you just thought it was going to be a continuation of the events that unfolded at Ewood Park during the week. And I have to say credit to Blackburn to sort of recover, revitalise, and just get back to the performance levels that we know and that we've come to expect of them, because I still consider them genuine promotion contenders, top 6 contenders. And I think that whilst that result completely knocked their confidence, their goal difference as well, which was key, they've shown that they can come against good opposition in Sheffield United. I know that they've been very inconsistent, and it's another result that has shown that, but not too many teams will beat Sheffield United convincingly and overturn a goal deficit like they did. And it's good to see from a Rovers perspective, Poveda and Kadra both starting and both getting on the score sheet, and Ben Brereton, Diaz as well, also getting on the score sheet, which I feel sorry for him because of how Mitrovic is doing this season, because I think he'd also be well on his way to break Ivan Toney's record. He's a player that's banging confidence, and given Kadra, Poveda, given what they can do on the wing and the service they provide, I think he can certainly look towards that 31 goal target. And if Mitrovic does leave, or if he does get injured or something, I'm sure he'll be well on his way to challenge him, basically. And I think it's a result that certainly proves that Blackburn will be up there, and responding that well is a very good sign.
Just on Poveda, Billy, obviously, so far this season, I think for Blackburn, it's been a little bit stop-start for him. He's had a few starts, a few sub-appearances, but a goal and an assist at the weekend, played the full 90 as well. Do you think this is the moment where he can start to kick on now, maybe sort of really establish himself in that Blackburn team? Perhaps a little bit unfortunate we got the international break, but he'll be looking, once that's over, to kick on. Certainly,
yeah. And I think Blackburn do have some strong forward options when everybody's fit. Then I think they're a little bit like West Brom, where they do rotate their options. They don't really have too much of a settled front three, and I think that's solely based on the performances of those on the fringes, and that's what you want in a squad. You want players that are challenging for those players, and Pervade is someone that's seemingly been knocking on the door and took his chance with both hands. And I think Kadra as well was another player who's on that similar wavelength, that has been sort of edged out the side by the front three of Dolan, Gallagher and Brereton. Those have been the three that have probably been best attackers so far for them. But they're proving that if you do put a couple of good performances in and you sort of continue playing that way in training, then you're knocking on the door and you're deserving a start. And they took that opportunity with both hands.
Okay, yeah, Blackburn's in 7th at the moment, level on points with the playoff places. Sheffield United, Ned, 18th position, 19 points. I think sort of mid-September time, things had finally started to pick up, and people perhaps thought that we're going to start seeing the real blades now. Obviously, beat Peterborough 6-2, beat the likes of Hull and Derby as well. But in recent weeks, it's sort of tailed off again, hasn't it? What are you making of them at the moment? They're quite hard to sort of put your finger on right now.
Yeah, there's sort of a real distinct lack of consistency, isn't there? I mean, I think it's that they haven't won back-to-back games all season. That's telling. The one thing I would say is, that there's certainly no time to panic just yet. That it's concerning that poor form, but you've got to say that they've got the quality to be one of those sides that they're not going to be challenging for the top two. They've certainly got the quality to sort of make a late dart into the playoffs or push up the table in the second half of the season. I think that Brewster goal could prove to be absolutely, key. He's a player that we know how good is at this level. Things obviously haven't worked out for him since that big money move to Bramwell Lane. But, if that goal can be the boost in confidence that helps him kick on, that'll be massive. As you said, this isn't where Sheffield United fans will have hoped or even thought their side would be at this point in the table. But there's a long way to go yet. And I think it's all about viewing the season as a whole and just trying to make those trying to find that consistency slowly. And as I said, they've got the quality. It's just about putting that run together in the second half of the season now.
Yeah, they'll be certainly looking to try and find a little bit more consistency and momentum after this latest international break. Right, up next, we're going to talk Blackpool's draw with Queen's Park Rangers. Billy, watching the game on Saturday night on Sky, it seemed quite topsy-turvy at times. I think both teams probably come out of it thinking they could have won the game. What do you make of Blackpool's performance? I thought at times, there was a real opportunity for them to put QPR away, but obviously they didn't manage to do so. And there was a little bit of a controversial goal ruled out as well in the first half too for the Tangerines.
Yeah, I've been really impressed with Blackpool and going into this game against a team like QPR, who have been sort of a side that have not been the strongest defensively. I've seen a real opportunity, especially away from home. I've seen a real opportunity for Blackpool to come into this one and really impose themselves on the R's. And to sort of a certain extent, they did. They played well. They used Gary Medine very well, and Keshi Anderson, his ability to get in behind and cause trouble, and his intelligence to sometimes pull in. I think that worked really well, caused QPR a few problems. Wingers as well, another sort of source of chances and creativity. I was impressed with that, but equally I thought it was quite a resolute display from QPR, who haven't been that good defensively, I want to say. In times they have shown that, but I don't think that's been their strong point this season. Shifting in too many goals and sort of their expansive football allows that to happen. But I think I saw sort of a shift in an approach from QPR against Blackpool. And I think it was a game between two teams that will definitely be challenging for the playoffs this season. QPR showing that their away form and can be improved. I think that to get into the top six, they need to be showing sort of the killer instinct against a side like Blackpool. But ultimately, Blackpool are a side that could be there themselves, because they're continuing to prove everyone wrong, continuing to prove the division wrong. And I think the majority of people had them down near the bottom of the league because of their lack of championship experience. But they've completely proved everyone wrong. Keeps coming back down to that. And that's what I think will continue to happen this season.
Blackpool sitting 10th at the moment on 25 points, just a point outside the playoff places. QPR in that last playoff spot in 6th on 26 points. Ned, Mark Warburton said after the game it's frustrating they've only got a point. They felt they perhaps could have won the game. But do you think, come sort of end of April, May time, they may look back at that point and think actually that was probably a decent away point to get? I think Blackpool's probably quite a tough place to go this season.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, I think you're right in the sense that come the end of the season when things are really tight, they might look back at a point away at Blackpool, in hot form really, and feeling confident as a good point, particularly as I felt really that I was really questioning that back line, particularly early on. I thought they could have conceded a number of times from set pieces, particularly before the penalty. But they rode it out. That they showed that bit of that quality that they do have with Chris Willock's goal, and they earned a point from it. And as you say, I'm sure on Saturday afternoon, most QPR fans will have been thinking, well, we should be getting all 3 points against Blackpool, but at full time they might have really been breathing a sigh of relief.
Yeah, certainly a decent point potentially for QPR when it all gets filtered out at the end of this season. One final game to talk about on the weekend review show, and that's Cardiff's win over Huddersfield. Kiefer Moore scoring a brace in the second half to overturn the opening goal for Huddersfield from Daniel Sinani. Billy, it's a really positive result for the Bluebirds, especially when you look at the likes of obviously Derby drawing and Hull and Barnsley playing each other. Cardiff needs to really win this game, didn't they?
Yeah, well, it was another result that I don't think I'll be coming back onto the betting show because I had Huddersfield in my value bet, and yeah, well, it started well for Huddersfield, and they're a team that tend to, if they score, that they're hard to break down. They attack well on the break, but I think Cardiff have sort of been revitalised since the departure of Mick McCarthy. Not to the extent that we've seen with the likes of Forest and Charlton, but I think there's definitely some confidence been instilled back into the side, and in the end, it proved to be 2 bits of quality that earned them the 3 points. And Kiefer Moore proving that if he gets the service, then he'll score goals. And I think that's what they've been missing recently. They've got the players there to create opportunities, but it just hasn't been happening in the attacking third. And when you've got a player as physically dominant as Moore and as clever in the box, then you're always going to score goals if you put the ball into the box.
Yeah, certainly a positive result for Cardiff. That leaves them 20th in the Championship table on 15 points, 3 clear of the drop zone. Ned, as for Huddersfield, a little bit of a disappointing result. I think that's fair to say. Their form's been a little bit patchy as well. A couple of losses in the last 5 games, a couple of draws as well, just the 1 win. What do you make of them at the moment? They're still well in touch with the playoff places. Obviously, 8th in the table at the moment, just 1 behind the top 6. What can you sort of think from this kind of result? What does it suggest for them after the international break?
I think they'll be really happy to see the international break, to be honest. I think 2 games in a row now that they led heading into I think they led with about 15, 20 minutes to go and crumble, throw away those leads. That's obviously really frustrating for Huddersfield, given the fact that they could have gone into the top 6 with a win. But, with fear of repeating myself, at this point in the season, as you said, it's really just about keeping touch for them, building the patchy form has meant that they've struggled, I guess, to build too much momentum. But what they want to do is sort of kick on refreshed after the international break. And as I said, if they stay in and around that playoff area as we head into the second half of the season, then it's all about just putting a run together, winning. Put a run of wins together as we get to the business end of the season, and they'll certainly be in the conversation if they can do that.
Okay, we will see how Huddersfield respond from that defeat at Cardiff after the international break. Right, just before we go on Football League World TV, it's time to tell you what's coming up later on. At 12:30, we've got the Sheffield Wednesday Fan Takeoff Show. Marcus Alley will be presenting that one. He's got James Mappin joining him from the Wednesday Till I Die podcast. And then at 2:30, Sam Rourke will be leading the EFL Transfer Zone. Marcus Alley is going to be a guest on that one, and Adam Jones will be joining them as well. Ned, Billy, thank you very much for joining us on the Weekend Review Show this Monday morning. People at home, thank you as well for watching, and we will speak to you very soon.